this is the 6 principal parts for didωμι, I'm giving. And what I want to do is kind of assure you that once you know the particular rules surrounding the present active stem and the imperfect active stem, and the special endings that are used for the present active indicative, then the rest of the paradigm is something that you can simply do on your own. Me verbs do look like luo for all the other tenses, except for a couple special rules. One, you have to learn the special suffix endings for the present tense. You have to remember, two, you have to remember the iota reduplication for both the present and the imperfect tenses, because the imperfect is built on the present tense. Three, the aorist forms, instead of using sa, many of the me verbs like using the ka tense formative, but it's readily recognizable from the perfect form, because while the perfect form has reduplication, the aorist form has an augment and no reduplication. So there's no danger confusing the two. You should be able to recognize the aorist form readily. It's just that instead of sa, you have ka. And then again, notice that depending on the tense, sometimes you have the short vowel being retained, like in the aorist passive form, and then sometimes, or the perfect middle passive form, but sometimes you have the short vowel going long, and you can memorize this as part of your principal parts, and once you do, then you'll be able to anticipate what vowel changes happen in the stem. And so let's kind of walk through some examples. So we already did the present tense. I already did the present active tense. So let's walk through instead the imperfect. So I'm going to do the imperfect forms. So we have did, do, un. All right, and so notice here that u is the form of the vowel change in the stem. So you can expect u for the imperfect. And so the imperfect endings are nu, sigma, nothing, men, te, nu. So just like the luo paradigm. And then they all have the augment. And really, what you have to remember for the imperfect is that because it's based on the present stem, it also has the iota reduplication. And then its verbal root da undergoes a vowel change, and it's different from the present tense. It likes using this diphthong u. So did dun is I was giving. This is I was giving. Did dus is you were giving. Did do is he, she, it was giving. Did damen is we were giving. Notice that this retains its short vowel. So like the present tense, it likes using the short vowel for the plural forms. Didate is you all were giving. And for the third person plural, we have a slight modification. It's de da san. It uses a changed form, de da san, for the third person plural. They were doing. Now all the forms for didωμι for every tense and for every mood is on page 360 in Mounts in the appendices. So go to page 60 and following, and you'll be able to look up all the forms for didωμι. So if you want to double check. But after doing the present and the imperfect active forms, and with it also work through yourself the present middle passive and imperfect middle passive forms, noting what happens to the vowel when you add the case endings for my, sai, tai, meta, sit, the nin, tai for the present, and main, sa, ta, methods of the ninta for the imperfect. Check your appendices, look at the chart, just kind of walk through it and see. And what you'll find is that once you get past the present and imperfect tenses, the rest of the principal parts, and therefore the rest of the forms, follow the luo paradigm. And the only thing you have to remember is that sometimes the aorist tense wants to use the ka tense formative, and sometimes the vowel in the stem undergoes a change. And other than that, it'll follow the same rules as luo. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling this chart out. Doso is I will give. Do seis is you will give. Do say is he, she, it will give. Do samen is we will give. Do sete is you all will give. And do su, si, or sin, they will give. Notice what the principal part doso tells you, because once you memorize the principal part, you can get the rest of the paradigm easily. It tells you that the stem vowel goes long, and then also notice that because this is the future tense, you don't use the iota reduplication, so you just use the bare stem. And so you have do, and then you just simply add the future tense formative sigma, and then the primary active suffixes. So in many ways, doso follows the same pattern as luso. It's just the stem is different. And then you can see the same thing happening with I gave, edoka. The stem is do, and just remember to use the kappa tense formatives for the aorist tense. And edoka is I gave. Edokas is you gave. Edo ke or ken is he, she, it gave. Edo kamen, we gave. Edo kate, you all gave. And edokan, they gave. What about the perfect tense? What does the principal part tell us? It tells us also that the short vowel for the verbal root goes long, has a regular reduplication, and then it has the same ka, kas, ke, kame, kate, kan, or kasin for the perfect suffixes. So if I were to write this out, dedoka is I have given. Dedo kas is you have given. Dedo ke or ken, he, she, it has given. Dedo kamen, we have given. Dedo kate, you all have given. And dedo kan, they have given. Now, yes, the form dedo kasen does exist. I don't think it shows up in the New Testament, though it does show up in secular discourse. But if you go all the way back to chapter 25 in Mounts does explain that the two ways to do the third person plural for the perfect tense is kan or kasi or sin. For the luo verbs, kasi is more frequent, and then for the mi verbs, kan is the form that is preferred. The middle form, notice that what does the principal part tell you? So I'm hoping that everyone sees that the principal part tells you what the stem is going to look like, and after that, all you have to do is apply the rules for luo, and you get the form. So really, the new material for the mi verbs resides mostly with the present and imperfect active stems, and with the fact that the aorist prefers to use the ka tense formative rather than sa, but everything else looks very much like luo. So the perfect middle passive form didωμι is I have been given, so I have been given, and then the second person singular perfect middle passive form is didωsi. Then it's didωti, didωmetha. The second person plural for didωμι is didase, or you all have been given, and then they have been given is didonti. And lastly, for the aorist passive, what does the principal part tell you? Short omicron is retained. You have the augment, and you have the thane, thase, they, etc. suffixes. So edathane is I was given. Edathase, you were given. Edathe, he, she, it was given. Edathemen, we were given. Edathete, you all were given. And edathesan, they were given.